Downloaded fine.
Yeah, it was no problem, just like usual, and never figured it out.
Well, it's good. A lot of people watched even though I reposted the hypertension lecture from last year.
Yeah,
Like over 40 more people watched it since then.
really.
So people watch, even though it was last year's one, people watched just as many people watched it like it was this year. So
That's
it was
great.
mostly the same. I mean, it was a lot of the same videos and stuff, but we had a little bit different discussion,
Exactly.
but it's okay.
What do we got this time?
This time, this is fiber, the magic of fiber.
Oh yeah, no problem. I read all these.
No problem at all. It could be a problem for some, but
I'm reading books today, in between time, Yeah.
yeah. So I see a few names. You do too, Scott.
Yeah, I think there's a few new names tonight.
So, for those of you who are new, haven't logged on before, we're just kind of curious how you found out about the classes and, what you might expect to get from them. We're just kind of curious. We don't have to know everything about you, but if you care to unmute yourself and say hello, we'd appreciate it. It looks like Patricia's trying to unmute herself and getting close. It is a little tricky. There you go.
Okay.
Well, we can hear you, Patricia.
I was with you a couple of years ago, and I did it, and then I lost some weight, and then I just kind of slipped back into my old ways. And I was working on Tuesdays until 7, so I didn't join you then. I kind of stopped. But I've always been checking in on you, and I've been connected with the email, and I'm just back. I'm just come to listen.
Well, welcome, and glad to have you back. And
okay, well, thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Great.
And all the classes are recorded now over the last couple of years. So if you're busy and miss a 7 o'clock class, you can always watch the recording later on the website.
Okay, thank you.
And we want to say welcome to Sarah. She says, sorry to be muted, but she's chasing her tiny humans around and just listening in. Her doctor recommended I check in to see if I can get some tips on making plant-based meals, primary source of nutrition. So congratulations that you have a doctor who actually gets it. And welcome to the class. And it's just fine to sit in the background, and maybe your kids will even pick up something, subliminal messages to help them on their journey. Anyone else? That I think there was you remember Dan? Scott at all? Is that new or?
Not sure.
Okay. So anyway, welcome. I don't know, maybe using under a different name or whatever it is. And then Bonnie Haight, welcome. She's in Idaho. She's a med student who we're happy to have. We love having the young people, and particularly med students who are going to be kind of counseling others in the future. And let's see, what else? Anybody else want to speak up and share either how you found out about the classes or why you encourage others to come to these classes? That's another option if there's one or two of you are interested to do that. no have to. We're just kind of want to make these classes for you and share the wealth, so to speak.
And I'll show the website because I'll show tonight's the handout that kind of is handy to have as a resource for tonight's topic about fiber. I'll show that here in a few minutes. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Even the old timers here, or some advice from the old timers for the newer people?
Yeah, Dolly. Just unmute. Getting closer. Still muted. There you go.
There we go. Well, in the beginning, sometimes it doesn't seem like things are working as fast as we would like them to work. But after, well, it's been 19 months now since we've been in the class, and my blood pressure is finally holding steady at 108/76. And I never thought I'd ever have low blood pressure or, off of blood pressure medicine, but I am, and it feels wonderful. I just have to watch my salt.
That's great. Thank you, Dolly. Anyone else? We have a lot of videos to share tonight, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'll try to stop intermittently on some of the videos. So, after we get done with watching one or two, try to stop, see if we can entertain a question or two, and then continue on. You're going to learn about the microbiome. You're going to learn about the bacteria that inhabit your colon, who act as your friends. When you feed them, they feed you back. And you'll find the benefits to these good bacteria and maybe the disadvantages to bad bacteria. Marcia, did you want to say anything?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
A while back, a month or two ago, my son told his kids that they ate too much fruit, they would poop too much. There's
Yeah.
such a thing as pooping too much or too much fiber.
Yeah, that's one of those myths, I believe. Scott, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, no. Basically there's a graphic by the fiber man himself, Dr. Dennis Burkett, who was a missionary surgeon in Uganda for 20 years. He's known as the fiber man, and when we do our class on lifestyle medicine pioneers, I'll talk about him later on. But he has this graphic that it was what he observed in Uganda, and because he was actually analyzing stools. They're taking stool samples from the villagers, and they were looking for, they couldn't find chronic diseases and things like that. So he had this graphic that showed the larger the pile of poop a village puts out, the smaller the hospital you need. And the smaller the pile of poop, the bigger the hospital you need. So the more stool you produce, usually that means you're eating a lot of whole plant foods, and then you're not going to be getting sick. You're not going to be getting chronic diseases. So yeah, they're just, if you're eating lots of fiber, yeah, you'll poop more, but that's a good thing.
So not too much poop. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Because I
welcome.
wanted about that. All right.
All right, Scott, do you want to show what's going on? And
Sure. I will
on
share
the
my screen
website?
here. Let me share here.
So this is the livelifestylemedicine.com.
Yep, livelifestylemedicine.com right here. Here's the home screen. So for those that are new to the class, you can go to livelifestylemedicine.com, sign up for the weekly class newsletter. Put a warning here just because a lot of times people will sign up and they'll get the welcome newsletter right away, but then you also get a newsletter every Sunday morning, and sometimes it goes to your junk file or spam folder. So you have to make sure you check there on a regular basis. If you like, oh, I used to get those Sunday morning emails, but I don't anymore. It's usually because it goes to the junk file from some MailChimp account. So sometimes that happens. So just a warning on that. And then basically, if you are new, scroll down about halfway down the homepage here and watch this website tutorial. Just click on it. It's about a 15-minute video I recorded that kind of gives you a tour of the website, so you can kind of know where to find all these resources. So you don't have to, try to show everybody here now. But I want to show you where to find the handout for tonight's class. That's like, we click on resources here is always a good place to start. So you click on resources, and then you'll see handouts from class right here at the top. And these are different handouts that we have that kind of go with the different class topics that we have each week. And so tonight we can scroll down. So there's lots of different ones. If you scroll down here and you look for PCRM fiber checklist right here. So that's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Click on that. And here's the PDF. You can download the PDF and print it or save it on your computer. So this is a real handy handout to have for tonight, because you'll hear, I think Dr. Ross is going to show one of the videos from Dr. Neil Barnard about talking about fiber and how much fiber is in a serving of beans and different vegetables and fruits and things like that. And here it is right for you. So if you don't memorize all the numbers that he talks about in the video, you'll know you have this resource here. So it's all written down for you here. So it talks about how much a serving of different foods are and how many. So a point equals grams of fiber is what you'll find out when you read this. And so you don't necessarily have to actually total up how many grams of fiber you get in a day. If you want to, you can, but that's not necessarily that important. It's just about, trying to increase your whole plant foods and where are the best sources of fiber and what's the importance of fiber and the foods that contain fiber. But yeah, so check that out. There's that. That's all I wanted to show on the website for now.
Thank you, Scott, for sharing that with everybody. And so with that said, we're going to kind of share our first video. We'll start out with that video you mentioned, Dr. Neil Barnard, or Barnard, I think he calls himself. So let's take a look at it.
Gotta share your screen still.
Oh, thanks. Oops. Let's try that again. So let's go to the share screen. Thank you. It's a good thing there's two of us here. One thing for sure. Okay, so now we're on the screen here. You can all see that, hopefully. And yep. I'm going to go to, let's see, what's this? Here we go. Let's try that again.
Oh, you just hit stop share.
Oops. Let's do it again. I pressed the wrong button.
Cooking class, designed by physicians, nutrition experts, and registered dietitians, includes medical information about how foods and nutrients affect cancer growth. The Food for Life series offers an entertaining cooking demonstration of simple and healthy recipes that can be recreated easily at home. Here is Dr. Neil Barnard, president of the Cancer Project.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. When researchers have looked for parts of the diet that can help us against cancer, prevent it or improve survival, or improve health overall, one of the things we've really keyed in on is fiber. What is fiber? Fiber means plant roughage. And by that I mean it's the part of plants that doesn't get digested right away. And it helps us in many ways. As one thing is it helps keep you regular. You hear people say that. All that means is it moves things along. But it doesn't just move food along, it moves carcinogens along. Let's say there was something not too healthy in the food I ate. Well, the quicker it leaves your body, the better off you are. Now, that can mean that if something was going to increase the likelihood of developing colon cancer because it's attacking the cells of your intestinal tract, it's gone. It's gone much faster. That's a good thing. Now, there's another thing, though. Fiber helps remove things that are circulating in your blood. How does that work? Your liver is filtering your bloodstream. Every minute of every day, blood is going through the liver, and the liver is looking for things that don't belong there. It's looking for hormones like estrogen or testosterone. You need some of those, but you don't need a huge excess, so your liver takes them out. It gets rid of cholesterol. It gets rid of medicines and things like that. And what it does is the liver filters the blood, finds a little excess estrogen, pulls it out of the blood, sends it down a little tube called the bile duct, and it ends up in the intestinal tract. And there, this little bit of estrogen goes down, attaches to some fiber that carries it out of the body. Very nice. So if you're thinking, well, a high amount of estrogen in my blood is linked to too much risk of breast cancer, a high fiber diet helps pull it away. One problem, a lot of people don't have much fiber in their diet. Let's say for breakfast I had bacon and eggs. How much fiber is there in that? Well, bacon and eggs aren't from plants. They don't have any plant roughage in it. Let's say for lunch I had yogurt and chicken breast. How much fiber is there? None, right? So the liver filters the blood. The little estrogen gets pulled out, goes down the bile duct, ends up in the intestinal tract looking for fiber, looking for fiber. Where is it? There isn't any. It reabsorbs back into the bloodstream. The estrogen goes around, ends up back at the liver. The liver says, what are you doing here? I thought I got rid of you. It pulls it out of the blood again, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract looking for fiber. Where's my fiber? There isn't any. It's absorbed again. That estrogen will do this cycle over and over and over again. It's called enterohepatic circulation. Entero means intestinal tract. Hepatic means liver, like hepatitis. And this works not just for estrogen, but also cholesterol. Cholesterol will go around and around and around until you eat fiber. You hear about oat bran and oat cereals. They will reduce the amount of cholesterol in the blood. That's all they do. It's not rocket science. What they do is they grab that cholesterol that the liver has sent down and they make sure it cannot get reabsorbed. That's a good thing. Same for testosterone. A man says, I don't want those testosterone excesses that are going to increase my risk of prostate cancer. Fiber is your friend. It puts the lid on it. It helps you to remove those excesses. Now let me walk you through an exercise. I want to help you to see how much fiber there is in the foods you eat. And inside of just a couple minutes, you are going to know how much fiber there is in just about everything in the store without reading the label. Will you do this with me? Okay. Let's take something like a banana. How much fiber is there in a banana? Now, you may not know right offhand, but give me a guess. Give me a guess. Is there 1 gram, 16,000 grams? How much fiber would you say there is in a banana? Anybody? 5, 8, 10, 2? Okay, very good. It's about 2.7 in an average banana. Okay, so not quite 3. How about an apple? Now, an apple's kind of like a banana, so it's not going to be 25. How much fiber would you guess is in an apple? 10, 3, what? About 3.7. So similar to a banana, a little bit more. How about cantaloupe? Now, here's a clue for you. If I take a cup of cantaloupe, it's a little bit more watery, so a little bit less fibrous. So if a banana is 2.7 and an apple's 3.7, what's cantaloupe? Okay, 1 to 2, right, good, about 1.3. So let's say an average fruit, you walk in the store, an average fruit is going to be about 3 grams per fruit. All right, let's take some vegetables. How about if I have a cup of broccoli? Give me a guess. Now, here's a clue. It's maybe broccoli's not quite as watery as a typical fruit, is it? A little more fibrous? So how much fiber would you say is maybe in a cup of broccoli? 6, 7, 8? Okay, about 4.6. So a cup of broccoli, about 4.6. How about carrots? Are they more like broccoli, or is a carrot more like cantaloupe? Well, it's more like broccoli. It's fibrous, right? So how much fiber? About 5? Very good. About 5.2 in a typical cup of carrots. How about iceberg lettuce? Well, it's not 0. It is a plant, okay? But you also know, you're thinking right, it's not huge. It's not like broccoli. So give me a number. 1, 1.5, okay, perfect, 1.2. All right, so a typical cup of vegetables, we're going to say 4. All right, where am I? Fruit, 3, vegetables, 4. Very easy, unless it's iceberg lettuce, when we're going to cut that down a little bit. Give me beans now. How about if I have a half-cup serving of black beans? How many grams of fiber in that? Now, here's a clue. Beans are not really watery. They're pretty fibrous. So, half cup of black beans? 8, 6, 7. Very good, about 7.5. How about baked beans? Baked beans? 6, 7? Okay, about 6.4. Good. So a typical half cup serving of beans, about 7. All right, where are we? Fruit, 3, vegetables, 4, beans, 7. Now let's go to our grain group. How about pumpernickel bread? Actually, a slice of pumpernickel has about 2 grams, about 2.1. It's less than you'd think. How about white bread? 0? Well, no, it's not going to be 0 because it is from a plant. Now, they've done their best to make sure there's no nutrition in there, but they did leave a little. So let's call it about a half a gram of fiber. Okay? So a typical bit of white bread, maybe up to a gram. A more whole grain bread, maybe about 2. But does that surprise you? Fruit is 3, vegetables are 4, beans are 7. The breads, which we think of as being high fiber, are lower. Okay, so our fiber champions, the bean group at about 7 for a half a cup, and then the vegetables at about 4, fruits at about 3, and if I have a slice of bread, if it's white, maybe a gram, if it's whole grain, about 2, typical cereals about 3. Okay, you walk in the store and you can look on the left, you can look on the right, and you can estimate, even for a packaged food or a canned food, what's inside, and you're going to have a pretty good ballpark of whether it has fiber or not. Okay, extra credit. How much fiber is there in a pork chop?
0.
0? 0? We agree? Well, why?
0.5.
Why? Is it from a plant?
It's from an animal.
It's from an animal. Animals don't have plant roughage, so the answer is 0. How about a cup of milk? 0 because it's from an animal, not a plant. Wait, how about if it's skim milk? How about if it's organic skim milk? Still 0? You're with me? Okay. How about eggs? 0. How about eggplant? Okay, very good. So there's fiber in eggplant. Okay, so I always like things that are easy to remember. Animal products don't have fiber. Plant products do. So what? Does fiber really help? The answer is yes. Let's say I want to knock off a few extra pounds. One of the best things you can do is pump up the fiber intake in your diet. I'm going to give you a number. Every 14 grams of fiber that are part of your regular daily menu, every 14 grams of fiber cuts your calorie intake by about 10%. So let's say a typical person in the United States is eating maybe 12 grams of fiber per day. Add 14, I get 26. I'm going to feel fuller. And even though I think I'm eating the same amount, my calorie intake drops about 10%. So if I go up another 14 from 26 to, where am I now? 40. My calorie intake drops again. I think I'm eating the same amount, but all that fiber fills me up. My calorie intake falls. Something's happening to my scale. I'm losing weight automatically without ever going hungry. Fiber is a good thing. It improves your digestion, it slims your waistline, it reduces cholesterol, and it'll reduce your cancer risk too. That's the power of healthy fiber. Thanks.
So I'm going to stop and ask a couple questions. Like he mentioned, it'll reduce your cancer risk. By about how much? Colon cancer risk. For every 10 grams of fiber that you add to your diet, you're going to reduce your colon cancer risk by, anyone have a guess? I'll tell you, 10%. So if you increase your fiber by 50 grams, which is what I did, 50 or 60, you reduce your colon cancer risk by about 50%. That's pretty good. How about reducing your breast cancer risk? But that's close to 8%. How about reducing your heart attack risk? For every 10 grams of fiber, it's about 10% less likely heart attack. There are many benefits to fiber, and we're going to learn some more about this as time goes on. The microbiome is really an important concept, and that's the next video that we're going to share with you. There are trillions of bacteria inside of us, trillions. And these bacteria actually feed us back chemicals if we feed them. And you'll learn through this series today what their food is. I wonder if you were to take a guess as to what the food is for the good bacteria, if you'd be able to get it right. It has to do with the title of today's session.
Fiber.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so I'm happy with the answer. And so we're gonna go on to the next video. It's called The Microbiome, the Inside Story. Okay, so let's go to that next.
Recently, it's become apparent that our DNA does not tell the whole story of our individuality, and other factors, environmental factors, play an important role in human health and disease, thanks to two revolutions in biology. First, there was epigenetics, where diet and lifestyle changes have been shown to turn genes on and off. And the second, our unfolding understanding of our microbiome, how changes in our gut flora appear to impact greatly on human biology. Until relatively recently, the colon was viewed as a retention tank for waste, and water absorption was its big biological function. The problem was it was hard to get in there, and we weren't able to grow most of the bugs in a lab. As many as 99% of all microbes fail to grow under standard laboratory conditions, and so how do you study something you can't study? But now we have fancy genetic techniques. It took 13 years to sequence the DNA of the first bacteria ever. These days, the same feat might only take 2 hours. And what we learned is that we can each be thought of as a superorganism, a kind of human microbe hybrid. We have trillions of bacteria living inside us. One commentator went as far as to say we are all bacterias, a provocative way of acknowledging that there are more bacterial cells and genes in our own body than there are human cells and genes, and most of those bacteria live in our gut. All animals and plants appear to establish these symbiotic relationships with microorganisms, and in us, our gut flora can be considered like a forgotten organ. Health-promoting effects of good bacteria include boosting our immune system, improving digestion and absorption. They make vitamins, inhibit the growth of potential pathogens, and keep us from feeling bloated. But should bad bacteria take roost, they can produce carcinogens, putrefy protein in our gut, produce toxins, mess up our bowel function, and cause infections. Researchers are still in the process of figuring out which bacteria are which. There are more than 1,000 different types of bacteria that take up residence in the human colon. Just to give you a sense of the complexity, let me show you a diagram from a typical study of gut flora. This happens to be the largest such study done on the elderly, showing the frailest older folks tend to harbor similar bugs, suggesting further it may be the lousy diet in nursing homes that's causing the shift, which may play a role in ill health as we grow older, as you can clearly see in Figure 4. I mean, duh. Thankfully, not all microbiome diagrams are that complex. Based on studying what comes out of twins, those that eat different habitual diets, and stools from around the world, it has become evident that diet has a dominant role on the bacteria in our colon, and the diet-driven changes in it occur within days to weeks. Change our diet, change our gut flora. The hope of impacting health through diet may be one of the oldest concepts in medicine. However, only in recent years has our understanding of human physiology grown to a point where we can begin to understand how individual dietary components affect specific illnesses through our gut bacteria. Milk fat on that piece of pizza, for example, may complex with bile and feed a bacteria that produces the rotten egg gas hydrogen sulfide and has experimentally been associated with colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. Fiber, on the other hand, feeds our good bacteria and decreases inflammation in the colon. Choline, found in eggs, seafood, and poultry, as well as carnitine in red meat, can be turned into trimethylamine oxide and contribute to heart disease and perhaps fatty liver disease. And excess iron may muck with our good bacteria and contribute to inflammation as well. The good news is that specific dietary interventions offer exciting potential for non-toxic, physiologic ways to alter gut microbiology and metabolism to benefit the natural course of many intestinal and systemic disorders.
Okay, so one last video that I want to play, and think of these two words, Bacteroides and Prevotella. Bacteroides are one type of bacteria, Prevotella are another type of bacteria. Now, there are animals that live in the desert, and there are animals that live in the ocean. They have different environments. They eat different things, different foods. And it's the same way inside your colon. If you choose to eat certain foods, you'll provide an environment that will promote certain types of bacteria. So listen closely as to what you may want to choose to eat to promote the kind of bacteria that you would like in your microbiome. And that's What's Your Gut Microbiome Enterotype.
The human gut has a diverse collection of microorganisms making up some 1,000 species, with each individual presenting with their own unique collection. But it wasn't known whether this variation is on a continuum or if people cluster into specific classifiable types, until this famous study analyzed the gut flora of people across multiple countries and continents and identified 3 so-called enterotypes. There were people who had lots of Bacteroides in their gut, people who had a predominance of Prevotella species, and people whose stool instead grew out of a lot of Ruminococcus species. Pretty amazing that with so many hundreds of types of bacteria that people would settle into just one of 3 categories. But they figure our guts are like ecosystems. Just like there's lots of different species of animals on the planet, they aren't randomly distributed. I mean, you don't find dolphins in the desert. In the desert, you find desert species. In the jungle, you find jungle species, because each ecosystem has different selective pressures, like rainfall or temperature. Well, this early research suggests that there are 3 types of colon ecosystems. You can split humanity up into 3 types. People whose guts grow out lots of Bacteroides-type bacteria, those whose guts are better homes for Prevotella group bacteria, and those that foster the growth of Ruminococcus. And if you think it's amazing they were able to boil it down to fit everyone into just one of 3 groups, subsequent research on a much larger sample of people was able to fold Ruminococcus into Bacteroides. So now everyone fits into just one of 2 groups. So now we know, when it comes to gut flora, there are just 2 types of people in the world. Those that grow out mostly Bacteroides, and those that overwhelmingly are home to Prevotella species. The question is why? It didn't seem to matter where you lived, male or female, how old or skinny you are. What matters is what you eat. And this is what's called a heat map. Each column is a different grouping of bacteria, and each row is a food component. Red is like hot, meaning a close correlation between the presence of this particular bacteria and lots of that particular nutrient in the diet. Blue is like cold, meaning you're way off. A reverse correlation, meaning lots of that nutrient is correlated with very low levels of that bacteria in our gut. They looked at over 100 different food components, and a theme started to arise. This column is Bacteroides, and this column is Prevotella. Note how they're kind of opposites. When it comes to things like animal fat, cholesterol, animal protein, Bacteroides is red, and Prevotella is blue. And when it comes to plant components like carbohydrates, Prevotella is red and Bacteroides is blue. Here's a simplified version, clearly showing the components found more in animal foods like protein and fat are associated with Bacteroides, with the Bacteroides enterotype, and those found almost exclusively in plant foods are associated with Prevotella. So no surprise African Americans fell into the Bacteroides enterotype, where most of the native Africans were Prevotella. The reason this may matter is that Bacteroides species are generally associated with increased risk of colon cancer, our second leading cause of cancer death, yet almost unheard of among native Africans. The differences in our gut flora may help explain why Americans appear to have more than 50 times the rate of colon cancer.
That stopped rather abruptly, huh? So let me see if I can get back to the stop the share and get back in the room. And let's have a little session on a little quiz time. So the average American eats approximately, he mentioned maybe 12, but I think it's up to 14 to 15 grams of fiber a day, somewhere in that neighborhood, still in the low teens or mid to low teens. And what does our country recommend for the amount of fiber that's healthy? 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. And what is the amount of fiber being ingested by rural Africans who were in this last video, or rural Chinese, or people who are like really healthy? Like, how much fiber do I put in my diet? Like maybe 60 to 70 grams a day, and some people eat up to 80 to 100 grams a day, and years past, maybe up to 120 grams a day. We'll maybe have time to get into that today, maybe not. But the amount of fiber has a huge impact on your health. And where do you get fiber from? You get it from any animal source? No, you only get it from plants. So keep that in mind as you move forward here. And you ask yourself, what kind of bacteria do I want to populate my colon with? Is it Bacteroides? If you want to do that, then you want to be eating a lot of protein, animal protein and fat. If you want to populate your intestine with Prevotella, you want to be eating more carbohydrates. Ooh, that's heresy. You know, you're all told, you're kind of under the impression that carbohydrates not so healthy for you, but they're really healthy for your microbiome. Now, I'm not saying refined carbohydrates are healthy, because what did they do to get a refined carbohydrate like white sugar? They stripped off what? The food for your microbiome. They stripped off the fiber to get to the white sugar and the white rice and the white bread. So don't be stripping off the fiber. Try to eat foods that are grown as they're grown in nature, which have their full amount of fiber. So with that said, I want one more little summation of what Dr. Barnard said. If you're eating 3 servings of legumes or beans or lentils, they are, a day, 3 servings, and a serving is a half a cup. How many grams of fiber would you be adding to your diet? Each serving has about how much did he say? Does 7 come to mind? Yeah, very good, Patricia. 7 times 3 is 21 grams of fiber. I try to incorporate that every day in my life. You have to start out that way? No, you can kind of gradually increase the intake of the beans and lentils and whatever it is in your life. But that is a healthy way, and it's Dr. Greger's daily dozen. You'll find he encourages people 3 servings of legumes every day. Work up to it. All right, 4 servings of fruit. How many grams of fiber am I getting in that? I'm actually eating 5, but let's say, so you get 3 servings, and each 3 grams in each serving, you get what, 12 more? So you add 12 onto 21, you're up to 33. How about the 5 serving of vegetables I eat a day? How many grams are in each serving of vegetable, approximately? 4? Yeah, so 4 times 5 is another 20. We're up to 51 right now. And then we add the whole grains, which are another about 3 for 3 servings with the oatmeal or the quinoa or the rice. And now we're up to 60 to 70 grams a day with a 1/4 cup of nuts. We're really batting pretty high on our average of fiber intake. So there's your quick analysis of what you may choose to do. If you wanted to follow Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, there are other options. You can go to PCRM and look and see what they encourage you to do. You can look on the initial sections where Scott has some beginning, what can you eat in your diet, and follow that. But if you're incorporating whole plant foods, you're going to go a long way to getting your health.
There's a question in the chat about does cooking the plants, does that decrease the amount of fiber? So,
not in my experience. No is the
No.
answer from both of us. There may be some nutrients that may be affected for the good or for worse. I think if you cook tomatoes and I think carrots, you can increase some of the nutrition value, but other issues, the more you cook them, maybe they have some less nutritional value. But the fiber stays there. When does the fiber leave? When you put food through a juicer and you leave the fiber behind. So we're not encouraging you to be making juices in your life. It would be better to make a smoothie because the fiber is within the smoothie as you drink it, if that's what you want to do. Any other questions from the gallery before we carry on? And I can carry on for a long time on this topic.
Another question we always get is, can you just do fiber supplements? But the answer is that doesn't give you the same benefit as getting the fiber from the whole plant foods. It's really it's a marker. It's not necessarily the fiber itself as much as it is the food that contains the fiber that has the health benefits overall. So yeah, don't get your fiber from stirring it into your orange juice or whatever, or adding it to your oat bran to your cereal or something. It's not necessarily harmful, but it's not going to have the same health benefit as if you get it from eating the food itself.
Okay, I'm looking around the room. I'm checking to see if anybody has their hand up before we get to the next video. Don't be shy. Okay, Edward.
How much fiber do you think is missed out on if you were to like peel an apple?
You need to raise the hand.
Yeah, that's okay.
So how much fiber if you peel the apple? Like the average amount on an apple, if you go by Barnard's example of, for an average fruit, it's 3 grams. I don't know exactly how much an apple has, but if you strip off the outer skin, which has a fair amount of fiber in it, you're probably decreasing it. I don't know, maybe 1 gram. That's just perfect, a guess. Maybe do a Google search and say, how many grams of fiber in a skinned apple versus a whole apple? I've never done that calculation before.
Okay. You think it'd be, I mean, I wouldn't want to anyway, but.
Yeah, because you want the other vitamins and nutrients from the skin, yeah. So it's not a healthy way to go, but it's like applesauce,
Yeah.
It's healthier to eat the food as it's grown instead of processed. And stripping away the outer shell is like stripping away the fiber from brown rice.
Mm-hmm.
Not the healthiest choice, but sure a lot healthier than eating an animal product.
Mm-hmm.
Now your bird Eureka may have a different take on whether she likes or he likes the fiber on the outside versus just the inside.
No, she loves the skin.
Okay. Well, let's follow Eureka's example and eat more skin with the apple. Okay, Susan.
Could you explain what a prebiotic is and how is it different from a probiotic? And
Yeah,
are they
so
both,
prebiotic, the probiotic is the bacteria, like you're talking about Bacteroides or Prevotella or Lactobacillus. There's different bacteria. So that's the probiotic. The prebiotic is what we're talking about, the food for those probiotics. It's the fiber. It's a prebiotic is the food for the bacteria. Very good question.
Thank you.
This is always a good time. I like to interject about a good analogy. If, people always ask about probiotics and things, and so you could put some healthy bacteria into your gut by eating fermented foods, or occasionally a probiotic can have some benefits sometimes in certain situations. But if you're putting those good bacteria in your gut, but you don't feed them their food, they're just going to die off. So the good analogy I like to use is if you have a shed out in your backyard and you put 2 rabbits in the shed, you have 2 rabbits in there, and if you throw pork rinds into the shed, pretty soon you're gonna have 1 rabbit, and you only have no rabbits, because rabbits don't eat pork rinds, so they die, right? And so, but what happens if you have 2 rabbits in your shed and you start throwing carrots into the shed? Well, pretty soon you're going to have 4 rabbits and 8 rabbits and 16 rabbits, and they're going to multiply because you fed the rabbits their food. So the rabbits equal the probiotic, the good bacteria, and the carrots is the prebiotic. You're feeding it their food. So if you're putting lots of good, say, good Prevotella species into your gut, but then you're eating processed foods and animal products, the standard American diet, those bacteria are going to just die off because you're not feeding them their food. So it's really important to eat a wide variety of whole plant foods to get the good bacteria. Yeah, getting out in nature. Fermented foods have live cultures and things in them, so those are good ways to get good bacteria into your gut. But then you have to feed those guys whole plant foods so that they'll survive and multiply and feed you back.
Okay, Barsha.
Excuse me. Yeah, the same question Edward had, except for, say, potatoes and carrots and all those that you peel. Would they lose anything then to them?
Well, they lose some fiber when you peel the skin off of potatoes and carrots and other things. So, if you've got a carrot or potato that's filled with dirt and you don't want to scrub it off or can't scrub it off, removing some of that seems like a reasonable option. And if you're eating a whole plant food lifestyle, you're probably getting plenty of fiber. And if you remove a little of it for whatever reason, probably not a problem.
Okay. Somewhere, I can't remember where, we used to hear if you take all the fiber and all the nutrients are in the peeling. I've read somewhere that that's not the case now.
It's not the case. There are many different phytonutrients, plant nutrients in the skin of the potato or carrot in comparison to the inside. And incorporating those is good for you. So incorporate as much as you're able to do.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Raise your hand, unmute yourself, say hello, whatever. Okay, we're going to get on to the next. It doesn't take very long to change your enterotype. You noticed he said you could do it in a few days. So I want to get on to prebiotics, tending our garden. What is a prebiotic? We just went over it. It's the food for our bacteria. Okay, so let's see what Dr. Greger says about prebiotics tending our inner garden.
The total surface area of our gut is maybe 3,000 square feet, counting all the little folds, larger than a tennis court. Yet only a single layer of cells separates our inner core from the outer chaos. The primary fuel that keeps this critical cell layer alive is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate, which our good bacteria make from the fiber we eat. We feed the good bacteria in our gut, and they feed us right back. They take the prebiotics we eat like fiber, and in return provide the vital fuel source that feeds the cells that line our colon, a prototypical example of the kind of symbiosis between us and our gut flora. How important are these compounds, our good bacteria derived from fiber? There's a condition known as diversion colitis that frequently develops in segments of the colon or rectum after surgical diversion of the fecal stream, meaning if you skip a segment of the bowel, like with an ileostomy, so that food no longer passes through that section, it becomes inflamed and can start bleeding, breaking down, closing off. How frequently does this happen? Up to 100% of the time. But the inflammation uniformly disappears after you reattach it to the fecal flow. We didn't know what caused it, maybe some kind of bacterial overgrowth or bad bacteria, or was it a nutritional deficiency of the lining of the colon due to the absence of the fiber needed to create the short-chain fatty acids? We didn't know until this study, where they cured the inflammation by bathing the lining in what it so desperately needed. Severe inflammation gone in just a few weeks. We feed the good bacteria in our gut, and they feed us right back. It makes sense that we have good bacteria in our gut that feed us, tries to keep us healthy. They got a pretty good thing going, right? It's warm and moist, and food just keeps magically coming down the pipe. But if we die, they lose out on all that. If we die, they die. So it's in their best evolutionary interest, right, to keep our colon happy. But there are bad bugs too, like cholera that cause diarrhea. They have a different strategy. The sicker they can make us, the more explosive the diarrhea, the better their chances of spreading to other people, into other colons. They don't care if we die, because they don't intend on going down with the ship. So how does the body keep the good bacteria around while getting rid of the bad? Think about it. We have literally trillions of bacteria in our gut. And so our immune system must constantly maintain a balance between tolerance to good bacteria while attacking bad bacteria. If we mess up this fine balance and start attacking harmless bacteria, it could lead to inflammatory bowel disease, where we're in constant red alert attack mode. The mechanisms by which the immune system maintains this critical balance remained largely undefined until now. If you think about it, there's got to be a way for our good bacteria to signal to our immune system that they're the good guys, and that signal is butyrate. Butyrate suppresses the inflammatory reaction, tells our immune system to stand down. So butyrate may behave as a microbial signal to inform our immune system that the relative levels of good bacteria are within the desired range. Right? Butyrate calms the immune system down, saying in effect, all's well, you got the good guys on board, ultimately rendering the intestinal immune system hypo-responsive, meaning kind of accommodating to the beneficial bacteria. But in the absence of the calming effect of butyrate, our immune system is back in full force, attacking the bacteria within our gut, because they're obviously not the right ones, since butyrate levels are so low. So we evolved to have butyrate suppress our immune reaction. So should our good bacteria ever get wiped out and bad bacteria take over, our immune system would be able to sense this and go on a rampage and destroy the invaders and continue rampaging until there are only good bacteria creating butyrate to put the immune system back to sleep. OK, here's the critical piece. Here's why this all matters. What if we don't eat enough fiber? Remember, our good bacteria use fiber to create butyrate. So if we don't eat enough fiber, then we can't make enough butyrate. We could have lots of good bacteria, but if we don't feed them fiber, they can't make butyrate. Sensing such low levels of butyrate, our body mistakenly thinks our gut must be filled with bad bacteria and reacts accordingly. Our body can mistake low fiber intake for having a population of bad bacteria in our gut. Our body doesn't know about processed food. It evolved over millions of years getting massive fiber intake. Even during the Paleolithic period, 100 grams of fiber a day. So on fiber-deficient Western diets, eating our Spam on Wonder Bread, right, when our body detects low butyrate levels in the gut, it doesn't think low fiber. As far as our body's concerned, there's no such thing as low fiber. It thinks bad bacteria. Because for millions of years, low butyrate means bad bacteria. So that's the signal for our body to go on the inflammatory offensive. So that's one reason why fiber can be so anti-inflammatory. One of the reasons fiber intake is critical for optimal health. Not fiber supplements, but whole plant foods. Fiber supplementation with something like Metamucil may not replicate the results seen with a diet naturally high in fiber.
Now, that was a pretty important video for those of you who either have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, or know people who have that. You may want to read Fiber Fueled by Dr. Bolshevich to review that again, or review this on nutritionfacts.org site. You need to have enough fiber in your diet if you're going to produce enough butyrate, and that calms down. The butyrate controls your immune system, tells you that you have enough good bacteria, and all's well. Stay calm, don't be fighting, don't be destroying what's going on in your intestine. Does that make sense to you? I hope so. If it doesn't, review it again, go through it again. But there's another important thing that butyrate does. It doesn't just stop with helping cut down on the inflammatory response. For those people, either yourself or those in your family, your friends, who have problems with weight, butyrate is a chemical that will feed back to your brain, come back and tell it you've had enough to eat. So let's take a look at this next video, and then I'll open up to questions after we do this next video. So the next video is called Paleo Poo. What can we learn from fossilized feces? Kind of a catchy title.
In the US, we tend to get less than 20 grams of fiber a day, only about half the minimum recommended intake. But in populations where many of our deadliest diseases are practically unknown, rural China, rural Africa, they're eating huge amounts of whole plant foods, up to 100 grams of fiber a day or more, which is what it's estimated our Paleolithic ancestors were getting based on dietary analyses of modern-day primitive hunter-gatherer tribes, and by analyzing coprolites, human fossilized feces. In other words, paleo poop. These most intimate of ancient human artifacts were often ignored or discarded during many previous archaeological excavations, but careful study of materials painstakingly recovered from human paleo feces says a lot about what ancient human dietary practices were like, given their incredibly high content of fiber, undigested plant remains, strongly suggesting that for over 99% of our existence as a distinct species, our gastrointestinal tract has been exposed to the selective pressures exerted by a fiber-filled diet of whole plant foods. So for millions of years before the first stone tools and evidence of butchering, our ancestors were eating plants. But what kind of plants? One way you can tell if animals are natural folivores or frugivores, meaning leaf eaters or fruit eaters, is to map the area of absorptive mucosa in our gut versus their functional body size. Folivores, are those meant to eat mostly foliage, leaves, while frugivores are better designed to eat fruit. The faunivores eat the fauna, another name for carnivore. If you chart animals out this way, they fall along distinct lines. So where do humans land? Here's our functional body size, and here's our absorptive area. So while eating our greens is important, it appears the natural dietary status of the human species is primarily that of a fruit eater. Why does it matter how much fiber we used to eat? Well, one theory for the rising levels of obesity in Western populations is that the body's mechanisms for controlling appetite evolved to match how many plants we used to eat. Our ancestors ate so many plant foods, we were getting like 100 grams of fiber a day, so for millions of years, food equaled fiber. So no surprise, one of the physiological mechanisms our body evolved to suppress our appetite involved this fiber. For example, fiber is metabolized by our gut flora into short-chain fatty acids, which bind to and activate receptors on the surfaces of our cells that alter our metabolism. For example, activating receptors on fat cells to increase the expression of the weight-reducing hormone leptin. Other hormones are affected as well. Since until recently, food meant fiber. An increase in food intake meant an increase in fiber intake, which made our gut bacteria so happy they made lots of short-chain fatty acids, activating the cell surface receptors, releasing a bunch of hormones that make us lose our appetite and downregulate hunger, so we eat less. But if we eat less, there's less fiber in our gut, so less of these hormones are released, which boosts our appetite, we get hungry, and we want to eat. But what if food doesn't equal fiber, like on the standard American diet? Then we keep just getting those signals to eat, eat, eat. We're always hungry. If we haven't eaten our 100 grams of fiber for the day, our body may be like, what, are we starving here? Discovering this mechanism makes the food and pharmaceutical industries very excited. They figure they can now come up with, the new drugs in the fight against the current obesity onslaught, or we could just eat as nature intended.
Oh, we could eat as nature intended, but the pharmaceutical industry is competing, and you know what drugs they're competing with.
Ozempic and Wegovy.
Yeah. So every night on the news, or every other night, or whatever it is, you're going to be getting these messages. How do you lose weight? You lose weight with an injection. And you're going to take this injection the rest of your life. And of course, they don't want you to see the articles by the increase in emergency department visits for nausea and vomiting and diarrhea and the side effects connected with these things. But depending on what route you choose to help you with your weight, or what your family or friends choose, eating whole plant foods is going to not have the side effects that these medications do. I thought it's fascinating science with this theory of, if you don't have enough fiber, you just keep getting these messages to eat, eat, eat. That resonated with me, because before I began eating so much fiber, I was always hungry. I could have just finished eating a big meal, and let me tell you, I could still pack in more when I got done with my animal-based meals in the past. Another piece of cake, another brownie, another cookie, some more nuts, cheese, whatever I could get my hands on. I never was satisfied. And then I began eating whole plant foods, and man, for 500 calories, it was like eating maybe a little smaller than a volleyball. And I started doing that in the morning. And man, it's really suppressed my appetite. And I think most of you will find the same thing. Yes, Marcia.
Yeah, have you guys heard of a, I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm gonna spell it. XYNGULAR diet? Zungler?
Zengali.
XY what?
NGULAR.
I haven't.
No, not sure.
Zangoli, anybody in the audience heard of that diet? I have to kind of go back on the view and see if anybody else has their hands raised because I'm on speaker view.
Are you talking about a drug called Zenical? Or are you talking about a diet?
A diet. This is a diet.
Well, it might be the drug that you take that has been promoted as the diet.
I guess she does take a lot of pills with it. But there's also, I looked it up and there is a diet plan. And so I just heard of it the other day. I thought,
okay, well, you know, you keep your eyes and ears open, you follow the internet and you follow magazines or whatever, you're gonna find a lot of people who are selling their wares, so to speak. They're making money, and there's a fair amount of placebo effect, and there is a fair amount of I don't know what else I can call it other than entrepreneurship. People wanting to make money and able to do that by selling goods that, you know, may initially appear to be helpful for you, but have a fair amount of side effects or just a placebo effect.
yeah.
So be careful about those.
Oh yeah, I'm not using it. But a friend of mine, well, the landlord just started it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to start an argument with them.
Okay, yeah, that's starting arguments is probably not a valuable issue at this point, you know. So who else? Anybody else have any comments, thoughts, suggestions on this? Is this a surprise, the butyrate for you? The amount of fiber that you might be able to work yourself up to could really make a difference. Is that surprising? Reducing cancer risk and other things? Dave and Cherie.
Hi. At the beginning, you know, we were talking about reasons for people to do this. One of the things that happened to me is I used to have to take a lot of Tums, omeprazole, all that stuff. And because upset stomachs most days of the week. But since I started doing this, I gave all those to my daughter and I don't need them anymore. Is that because of the increase in fiber?
You know, it's a familiar story that we hear, that people are able to stop taking their acid suppressing medicines.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have a good explanation for that. Scott, have you heard anything at one of the seminars you've attended as to
Well, there's
why
definitely a
that
mechanism.
actually happens?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot more stomach acid to digest animal products. So you not only need, you know, your hydrochloric acid in your stomach, you also need lots of pancreatic enzymes and lipase and all these different gallbladder, more bile, because bile breaks down fat, and so you have all the high fat foods that don't have any fiber and things, you know. It's more acidic essentially, so it's more likely to cause heartburn to excess acid and stuff too. So but yeah, I think it's probably a combination of that, and then because yeah, I had heartburn almost every day, and that went away within 2 or 3 months after I changed my diet. So that's a very common thing for you to not have any more heartburn.
I used to avoid pepper and garlic and onions, and now I have onions and I pour pepper on sometimes. And I feel fine. It's pretty wonderful.
That's great. Yeah, and sometimes certain foods still, if someone eats something too spicy, like even for me, if I eat a little bit too much tomato sauce with like pasta or something like that, I'll still get a little bit of heartburn if I eat too much of that. But if I didn't eat the sauce and just ate tomatoes, I'm fine. So it's kind of, everyone still might, certain people still might have certain foods that trigger them, even if their baseline heartburn goes away.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else have anything that they'd care to share or ask? Kind of searching around the gallery, see if anybody raises their hand or unmutes themselves. Sometimes I can see that. Okay, I'm not done.
Someone asked any more videos, question mark?
Yeah. Yeah, so we definitely have some more videos. And so let's carry on, and we'll come back and see if you have more questions. All right, so we're going to share the screen. Let's see if we can get back to where I was in the overall scheme of things here. Come on. It's somewhat easy for me to get lost on this, but it's also somewhat easy to figure out how to get back to the videos that we're sharing. It's a number 6 here, tip. Okay, so the next video is the fiber theory wrong? Let's see what Dr. Greger has to say about that.
Fiber-containing foods may not only help prevent heart disease, but help treat it as well. Heart patients who increase their intake of fiber after their first heart attack reduce their risk of a second and live longer than those who don't. But what if we really don't want to have a heart attack in the first place? If 7 grams of fiber gets us a 9% reduced risk, would 77 grams a day drop our risk 99%? Well, that's what they used to eat in Uganda, a country in which coronary heart disease, our #1 killer, was almost non-existent. Heart disease was so rare among those eating these traditional plant-based diets. There were papers published like this: a case of coronary heart disease in an African? After 26 years of medical practice, they finally recorded their first case of coronary heart disease in a judge consuming a partially westernized diet, having fiber-free foods like meat, dairy, and eggs displace some of the plant foods in his diet. Were there so few cases because Africans didn't live very long? No, the overall life expectancy was low because of diseases of childhood, like infections. But when they reach middle age, they had the best survival, thanks in part to our #1 killer being virtually absent. Of course, now diets have westernized across the country, and it gets to now be their #1 killer as well, from virtually non-existent to an epidemic. Some blame this change on too much animal fat. Others blame it on too little fiber, but they both point the same solution, right? A diet centered around unrefined plant foods. In fact, sometimes it's easier to convince patients to improve their diet by eating more of the good foods to kind of crowd out some of the less healthy options. The dietary fiber hypothesis, first proposed in the 70s, zeroed in on fiber as the dietary component that was so protective against chronic disease. And since then, evidence has certainly accumulated. Those who eat lots of fiber appear protected from several chronic conditions. But maybe fiber is just a marker for the consumption of foods as grown, whole unprocessed plant foods, the only major source of fiber. So maybe all these studies showing fiber is good are really just showing that eating lots of unrefined plant foods are good. Fiber is just one component of plant food, and to neglect all the other components, like all the phytonutrients, may be to seriously limit our understanding. Why did Drs. Burkitt, Terrell, Painter, Walker, the fathers of the fiber theory, place all their bets on fiber? Well, one possible explanation for this is that they were doctors, and we doctors like to think in terms of magic bullets. I mean, that's how we're trained, like one pill, one operation. They were clinicians, not nutritionists, and so they developed a reductionist approach. Right? The problem with that approach is that if we reach the wrong conclusion, we may come up with the wrong solution. Burkitt saw disease rates skyrocket after populations went from eating whole plant foods to refined plant and animal foods. But instead of telling people we should go back to eating whole plant foods, he was so convinced fiber was the magic component, his top recommendations was eat whole grain bread, but they never used to eat any kind of bread in Uganda, and sprinkle some spoonfuls of wheat bran onto your food. But studies to this day associating high fiber intake with lower risk of disease and death relate only to fiber from food intake, rather than from fiber isolates or extracts. It's not at all clear whether fiber consumed as a supplement is beneficial. In retrospect, maybe it was a mistake to isolate fiber from the overall field of plant food nutrition. The evidence supporting the value of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, as opposed to only fiber, has proved to be more consistent, much more consistent. Plant whole foods are what's of fundamental importance in our diet. Fiber is just one of the many beneficial components of fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and beans. Much of the effort on defining fiber and studying the fiber isolate would have been better applied to a whole plant food approach. What would have happened if Burkitt and others had instead emphasized the value of plant foods? The value of eating unrefined plant food, which incorporates fiber and phytonutrients, might have been the focus of attention rather than just isolated fiber, which leads people to shop in this aisle for their fiber instead of this aisle.
Okay, and we don't have a lot of questions today, so I'm going to play one more video, and then we'll see if there are any questions after that. And this is the microbiome. We are what they eat. And this, again, would be talking about the bacteria in our colon. Last video.
Good bacteria, those that live in symbiosis with us, are nourished by fruits and veggies, grains and beans, whereas dysbiosis, bad bacteria that may contribute to disease, are fed by meat, junk food, and fast food, seafood, dairy, and eggs. Typical Western diets can decimate our good gut flora. We live with trillions of symbionts, good bacteria that live in symbiosis with us. We help them, they help us. And a month on a plant-based diet results in an increase of the good guys and a decrease in the bad, the so-called pathobionts, the disease-causing bugs. Given the disappearance of pathobionts from the intestine, one would expect to observe a reduction in intestinal inflammation. So they measured stool concentrations of lipocolin-2, which is a sensitive biomarker of intestinal inflammation, and within a month of eating healthy, it had declined significantly, suggesting that promotion of microbial homeostasis, or balance, by a strict vegetarian diet resulted in reduced intestinal inflammation. And this rebalancing may have played a role in the improved metabolic and immune system parameters. On an animal-based diet, you get growth of disease-associated species like Bilophila wadsworthia, associated with inflammatory bowel disease, and A. putridinus, found in abscesses and appendicitis, and a decrease in fiber-eating bacteria. Eat fiber, and the fiber-munching bacteria multiply, and we get more anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, short-chain fatty acids. Eat less fiber, and our fiber-eating bacteria starve away. They are what we eat. Eat a lot of phytates, and your gut flora get really good at breaking down phytates. We assumed this was just because we were naturally selecting for those populations of bacteria that could do that, but it turns out our diet can teach old bugs new tricks. There's one type of fiber in nori seaweed that our gut bacteria can't normally break down, but the bacteria out in the ocean that eat seaweed have an enzyme to do so. When it was discovered that the enzyme was present in the guts of Japanese people, it presented a mystery. Sure, sushi is eaten raw, and so some seaweed bacteria may have made it into their colons, but how could some marine bacteria thrive in the human gut? It didn't need to. It transferred the nori-eating enzyme to our own gut bacteria. Consequently, the consumption of food with associated environmental bacteria is the most likely mechanism that promoted the enzyme update into our own gut microbes, almost like a software update. We have the same hardware, the same gut bacteria, but they just updated their software to chew on something new. Hardware can change too, though. The reason this is called the way to a man's heart is through his gut microbiota is because they were talking about TMAO. Certain gut flora can take carnitine from the red meat we eat, or the choline concentrated in dairy and seafood and eggs, and convert it into a toxic compound, which may lead to an increase in our risk of heart attack, stroke, and death. This explains why those eating more plant-based diets have lower blood concentrations of the stuff, but they also produce less of the toxin even if you feed them a steak. You don't see the same conversion, suggesting an adaptive response of the gut microbiota in omnivores. They are what we feed them. It's like if you give people cyclamate, a synthetic artificial sweetener. Most of our bacteria don't know what to do with it. But if you feed it to people for 10 days and select for the few bacteria that were hip to the new synthetic chemical, eventually 3/4 of the cyclamate you eat is metabolized by the bacteria into another new compound called cyclohexylamine. But stop eating it, and those bacteria die back. Unfortunately, cyclohexylamine may be toxic, and so was banned by the FDA in 1969, whereas regular Kool-Aid, evidently, is completely safe. But if you just ate cyclamate once in a while, it wouldn't turn into cyclohexylamide, because you wouldn't have fed and fostered the gut flora specialized to do so. And the same with TMAO. Those that just eat red meat or eggs or seafood once in a while would presumably make very little of the toxin because they hadn't been cultivating the bacteria that produces it.
Okay. So I'm done with the video. We're open for questions and see, feel free, don't be shy. Now's the time. Just unmute or put your hand up. Yes, Trouty. Go ahead and unmute yourself first. And then Ann.
What is TMAO concentration?
It's trimethylamine and oxide. It's a inflammatory chemical that's produced by.
That's all I want to know. Inflammatory.
Yeah, it's an inflammatory chemical. It leads to plaque formation, atherosclerosis, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Maybe even some increase in cancer. Yes, Ann.
Okay. Thinking about Dr. Greger's Dirty Dozen.
Yeah.
And then thinking about what Dr. Barnard said about when you eat the fiber, it helps to flush out the toxins and the things that you're getting. So my thinking here is, and maybe I'm wrong, just a theory, right? Is that because we can't always get the blueberries and everything that have, the best, they're part of the Dirty Dozen. So if we're eating the fiber, if we're eating cereal with our berries and things like that, so is that helping get rid of those toxins as we're eating them because we're eating fiber with it?
Well, I as far as colon cancer is concerned, if you eat more fiber, you're going to speed everything through your intestine. The toxins are not going to stay in contact as much.
Right.
So that's a benefit. Dr. Greger makes a point that if you, it's the benefits of eating the fruit and veggies, even if they're not organic, even if they are sprayed or whatever it might be, the advantages of just eating fruits and vegetables outweigh the potential toxic effects that
Right.
you might be receiving. So, you know, it's, if you're able to afford it, it's best to eat, you know, according to the organic, if it's in the Dirty Dozen group, and the Clean 15, you know, you can do whatever you choose to do. But maybe you're right in terms of the fiber is helpful with it, but I don't know. Scott, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, actually, that has been shown. Sure, her theory is correct in that if you, the longer that the slower and the longer the stool stays in contact with the colon wall, the more absorption you get, if you even of the bad stuff. That's why, like, when you eat a big serving of meat, the meat tends to putrefy in the colon, and then all the bile acids that are being produced by that get reabsorbed, and that's one of the mechanisms they believe is increased risk of colon cancer. The more servings of meat you eat, the higher the risk of colon cancer. And one of the theories behind that, and that's been tested out, is that the putrefaction in the colon and the increased bile acids get reabsorbed into the colon wall. And so if you eat a lot of fiber, you know, that's why the servings of fiber decrease the colon cancer risk, is because it does speed things along, and so that the bad stuff like the bile acids don't get reabsorbed and other toxins and things. So the other question that people sometimes bring up with that is, do we absorb less of the nutrients if we eat so much fiber? And the answer is no, we get everything we need. It's basically because that's the natural state. As you saw in all these videos, 100 grams of fiber is kind of what our physiology is used to and laid down, prepared for, essentially. So when we don't get that, and people are chronically constipated, generally, that eat the standard American diet in comparison, then that's part of the problem, is that things are moving too slowly through and things get reabsorbed and things like that. So yes, your thought was correct there.
Okay, thank you. Also, I would like to know about nori. I looked at the packages of the nori that I had that were coming in the smaller little sheets, and then even the bigger ones in the grocery store. And as looking to them to have iodine, and just get your little bit of that in, I have not seen it actually listed on any of them. So is there a brand that you would recommend that actually says it has iodine, or are we to assume these companies are not taking it out before they're pressing it into sheets?
I think you assume they're not taking it out, but you don't really know how much is in it. So you could call the companies or the distributor or whether and ask them, you know, so how much iodine is in this product? If they can't come up with an answer, then you can't necessarily assume you're getting an adequate amount. It's a good
So
thought.
what would you suggest?
I would suggest.
You take salt?
Yeah, well, we eat dulse every day.
Dulse.
And that's how I got started with Greger, eating dulse. Wakame has some advantage because it has medium and long chain fatty acid in higher quantity. But he also says a couple sheets of nori a day, and he doesn't say how large the sheets are adequate for, like doing omega-3 kind of things. And I had assumed that it was iodine in there also, since it's from the sea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think iodine is processed out of nori, but I haven't been able to find how much iodine is in nori. And it may be smart to do what Scott's doing and just take an iodine jab.
Yeah, mine's made from kelp. It's iodine supplement with kelp. It's made from kelp. Yeah.
So if you're uncertain, get your thyroid function checked. Do a TSH level. If it's in the normal range, you're getting enough iodine. That's what I would do. That's if you can't find out the answer of whether there's iodine in there. If you're not getting enough iodine, you're going to get low on your thyroid, and it's going to alter the TSH and your thyroid level.
I don't have the papers here, but I know that my doctor at one point said, oh, we better look at that, you know, and it was one way. And we go back in, oh, we better look at it again because it's the other way. But I don't think he's dealing with people who eat like us.
Yeah.
I know he isn't, because at one point he said, you're not going to like it when I tell you about something else that was going on. He said, I would tell you to eat meat. I'm like, oh, no, it ain't happening.
So if you'd like to pursue it further, just send me an email and I'll take a look at the results that you have if you want to send me those.
Okay.
And give you my thoughts on it. It's Katanya Ross at msn.com. CAT like a cat. ANIA ROSS.
Okay, could you do that one more time? CH.
CAT like a cat.
Cat. Okay.
ANIA ROSS.
It's also on our.
Thank
Sorry, all our emails are also on the class website under about.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I know he doesn't, he doesn't know what's going on.
We get it. So that's why we're here. We'll help you out.
Thank you.
So do you understand? I don't understand why like kelp powder is a bad source of iodine. Dr. Greger said it was because you can get too much and that's bad, but why can't you tell how much is in? I mean, it looks uniform. How much is in like the powdered kelp? Do you understand any of that? And I certainly don't. And all I know is that I've been told that it's not a good source, and you take dulse, and I can get that too, just what do you do? Just tear it up and little
Yeah,
pieces?
we just tear a couple of 2 to 3 inch strip, which is probably an inch wide, and we eat that every day. And our thyroid function tests have tested normal, and
Good.
we haven't actually analyzed how much iodine is in dulse, but he recommends doing a bag once a month of dulse. That is either a 1 ounce bag or it comes in a package that's about 6 inches.
Yeah.
6 inches.
Yeah.
So
I've
one package a month is what he recommended.
Which ends up to be about what, 3 by 2 piece, you say, a day for you, your wife? Okay, thanks.
And you'll adjust it after the first month as to whether it lasts a month. If you use it in 3 weeks, you'll eat a little less. If you have a lot left over, you'll eat a little more. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Marcia.
I have the Dulce flakes. Is that just as good?
Yes, the dulse flakes are just as good.
Okay. How long do you know how long the flakes last?
I don't.
Okay.
So you just kind of have to guess. And I'm not sure how many teaspoonfuls. 1 or 2, probably.
1 tablespoon.
Maybe a tablespoon. That would be 3 teaspoons.
Yeah.
Either a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon. Maybe on Greger's site, someone's asked him that. You can send him a question also on his site, nutritionfacts.org, and he may not answer, but one of his people might answer that question. Okay, who else? Anybody else have an issue or an answer?
We should announce next week is 4th of July, but Charlie and I will still be here. We're just going to do it in another open forum. Even though we just had an open forum last week, we figured we better just do an open forum since it's 4th of July holiday. But I'm here, Charlie's here, so whoever wants to come, we'll be here.
Yeah, we'll be here, and I just want to remind some of you who are doing Lisa Chick's book club tomorrow night. She's going to
Thursday.
or Thursday, 2 days. She's going to be doing the book club again. She was at Mount Hood today, so couldn't come to the class today, but she'll be doing it. I forgot to tell my afternoon class today that probably we could skip it next week, but I told them we're going to do it. So I'll show up and we'll see who wants to be there in the afternoon. Let's see, anybody else? This has been fun. So it looks like we have accomplished another class, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your
That's great.
input. Thank you all for the questions and for your interaction. It's been great fun, and we look forward to seeing those of you who want to show up next week. We'll answer some questions until you all want to go home.
Charlie, I got one more question.
Okay, Trouty.
Where do you find TMAO?
You find it in your bloodstream after the bacteria gobble up the bacteria that you've been feeding meat, dairy, and eggs to. If you've been doing that, if you haven't, if you're not eating meat, dairy, and eggs, you won't find the TMAO.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else? Kalyani, nice to see you.
Yes, thank you. This is really informative.
Well, we're trying to keep it interesting for everybody, and particularly for the younger folk. We want to, some of the science is pretty amazing, is it not?
Yeah, sorry, I'm backlighted. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's really, there's too much conflicting information out there. So it's really nice to get the actual studies and the videos that you show.
Well, good. Good. Glad that you're enjoying it. Nice to have you log on.
Thank you.
Be helpful for your future patients.
I'm here to learn.
I can see that. We're thrilled. Okay, everybody. Scott, thanks again.
Yeah. See you next week.
Say good night. Till next week.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.